Alright, so with that we have arrived at the edit functions, which is more of the sub-functions of the data bender. So let's have a look. Okay, glitch windowing. Using Shift plus time, you can scale an amount of windowing to be applied to the individual stutters. Okay, so I think this might actually become useful with the previous function, which is the break in micro mode. So when I press the Shift knob, you will see that the LED lights up blue, which means that the windowing is in its default state, which is, I believe, it's a short amount of time, so basically it gets rid of the initial clicks, but you can make it a lot more clicky, if you will, by adjusting the Shift plus time adjusts this function. Now I'm going to turn it all the way down and listen now. You hear those clicks, that first transient? So if I change this, see how the clicks disappear? So if I read the manual, it says when turning this all the way down, there will be hard edges and clicks will happen often. Great for glitchy beats and sound effects. When turning this all the way up, the glitches will be fully windowed, only reaching its full volume for a moment before fading back out. Great for ambient gems. While holding Shift, the Shift LED will indicate the current amount of windowing. So if the LED, there's no light in the LED, the LED doesn't come on, then there is no windowing applied. If the LED is blue, then the default minimal amount of windowing is applied. And beyond that, the LED will indicate from dim to bright white the amount of windowing that is applied. Okay, let's put it back to glitchy. Cool. So, Qubit, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I hear, that is also a random value. So even if you have this glitch windowing all the way dialed down or dialed up, there might still be the occasional clicks and pops at the beginning, at the end. From what I heard, I could be totally wrong. It would be great if you guys could confirm that. But yeah, it sounds amazing. Okay, the restore settings action will reset this to the default amount of windowing, which brings me to the next subject, and that would be restore settings. While holding Shift, pressing the break button will restore all settings back to their default. So holding Shift, pressing the break button resets everything to its default. Okay, so now if I press and hold the Shift knob, this should light up blue, which it does, which indicates that the default windowing is applied. So the LED for this button will pulsate white to indicate that it is the restore default settings function. So you see the break button's LED is pulsing white. When pressed, it will blink blue to indicate the settings have been restored to their defaults. This sets, and I quote, windowing back to default windowing, which is 2%. Okay, so that's the number I was looking for. So the default windowing amount, this is 0%, this is 100%, and anything in between. When we restore the data bender, then this default amount is at 2%. Okay, so the restore setting also restores the following parameters. So windowing back to default windowing, which is 2%, like I just said. The bend, the break are disabled. The freeze is disabled. Mode goes back to macro mode, so blue LED. Stereo behavior, which we haven't talked about, will go back to shared mode. Gates to latching. Break jacks set to primary function, so not the reset or the sync. And the freeze button behavior to latching mode. So on and off. Okay. Let's go to gate behaviors. While holding shift, the clock LED will indicate whether the gates are configured as momentary or latching. So holding shift and the clock LED, pressing the button while holding shift will toggle between the two options. So it goes between blue and green. When the LED is blue, it means that the gates are latching, so each trigger input will toggle the state of the gate controls on and off, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. When the LED is green, however, the gates are momentary, so an incoming gate signal will hold the state of the button on if it is off, as long as it is held high. Okay, so let's take a gate signal, which, oh, actually I already have a gate signal here. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna patch this into the bend functions input jack. So right now, actually I'm gonna put it back to the default mode, which is the blue, which is the latching mode. So that means every time I press the gate, it will turn the function on and it will hold it. Every time I press it again, it will turn it off again. So basically the gate functions as a on, off, and that goes for any gate. It's another type of gate, on, off, okay? Now, if I change this to the green option, which is the momentary, that means every time I have to press and hold the gate button to keep it enabled. Every time I let it go, it will turn off. So if I take my finger off of it, it will turn it off. With this you can do some crazy stuff. Okay, so let's put that back to latching. Alright, stereo behavior. While holding shift, the bend LED will indicate the stereo behavior of the macro mode controls. Okay, so the macro mode controls. So right now we're in macro mode. Let's see what happens here. So press and hold the shift, and the bend button will indicate by blue that we're in the unique mode. So that means all automatic bend or break settings will be unique for each stereo channel. So this, from what I'm understanding, it separates the left and right channel. They both don't do the same thing. So that would be the default mode. If I change this to green, which is the shared mode, that means all automatic bend break settings are set the same for both stereo channels. So let's turn it on. Look at the sound field monitor. Dial in some repeats. So this is the shared mode. Now let's switch to the unique mode. Now look at the sound field meter again, and of course listen. I guess a rough analogy would be a stereo delay versus a ping pong delay. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, corrupt as reset. While holding shift, the corrupt LED will indicate whether the corrupt gate input jack is configured as normal, which is blue, or as a reset input, which is green. When configured as a reset jack, the corrupt input will cause the internal or external clock to resync. Okay, let's try this, and I'm gonna do that by taking the DFAM off of the Mother 32 clock, and I'm gonna change the tempo, and I'm gonna use the DFAM's trigger output to reset this the clock of the data bender. So we're gonna put the corrupt to the function that will allow me to do that. So the green LED. No, that's not that one. Sorry. The corrupt input is the one in the middle. My apologies. This can be useful for synchronizing with a DAW or manually restarting the buffer and randomizing macro mode controls when running with a slow internal clock. So let's dial in some. In internal clock mode, this will resync. Let's switch to internal. So in internal clock mode, this will resync the internal clock immediately, causing new audio to load into the buffer, possibly resulting in silence during certain band break settings. This does move the playback head into a reset position immediately, which can cause clicks, which I'm hearing right now, so yeah. In external clock mode, this resets the subdivision counter to align the divided clock with an external beat. This will take effect on the next clock cycle. Okay, awesome. Freeze behavior. While holding shift, the freeze LED will indicate the behavior of the freeze button. And there are two modes. Blue, which is freeze button is latching. This is kind of the same as the gate functions. So right now, because this is flashing blue, so it's in the latching mode. Every time I press the freeze, it will turn on. Every time I press, it will turn off. And if I change this to momentary mode, I believe, yes, green freeze button is momentary. Pressing the button engages freeze instantly, and releasing the button disengages. So I have to press and hold the freeze button in order to keep it working. Alright, and last but not least, I think we are getting to the end of this manual. The last chapter is storing settings between power cycles. Several settings are stored between power cycles. Settings are stored whenever the shift button is released, as frequently as once every 2 seconds. Okay. the following settings are stored: bend state, break state, corrupt mode, clock source, processor mode, so macro or micro, stereo mode, unique or shared, windowing amount, latching or momentary gate behavior, latching or momentary freeze button behavior, and corrupt as reset behavior. And indeed, that does bring us to the end of the data vendor manual. I truly hope you got a lot out of these few videos. My opinion about this module is I'm 1000% blown away. This is freaking amazing, and I'm so happy that I went through this manual, because, you know, usually I just get a module, I pop it in there and I start fucking around with it, and, you know, after half an hour I think I mastered it and I'll think I'll know everything about it, which is rarely the case. It is also rarely the case where I decide to break open a manual and read it from beginning to end, and every time I've done that in the past, I learned tenfold more about the module in question. So that's the reason why I decided to create these videos, and, you know, I'm gonna keep going with this. I'm gonna make one about the DFEM, the Mother 32, and a whole bunch of other things that I feel that needs to have more information out about it on the interwebs. So again, I really truly hope that you found this useful. If you have any questions, comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section. If you liked what you're seeing, please do give me give this video a like. It really does help the channel a lot. And as always, don't go too far, because the next video is right around the corner. Thanks very much for listening. Ciao.